Hey guys, this is Camila and my classmate Catalina Herrera. We're gonna be talking about multitude from pages 174 to page 188. So we made this brief summary about it. So after the 1997 economic disaster, the IMF has been identified as one of the responsible for this crisis, and despite this, its policies have not changed much since then and has continued with its neoliberal monetarist system. The IMF, created in 1994 through an international treaty in 1945 in order to support and stimulate the proper functioning of the world economy through loans for specific projects in the course of its history to avoid crisis in the system, supporting countries to embrace well-founded economy policies measures. Institutions such as the World Bank are basically dedicated to support the economy development to solve the problems generated by poverty and the most vulnerable populations in countries. But it's not secret to anyone that trying to reduce global poverty and divisions is not an easy job when those who work in such institutions have to deal with corruption and all kinds of political divisions without even mentioning racial or gender differences.
So about the main claims, we wrote the main claims about this section, about this chapter that we read, and it was about World Bank, IMF, WTO, big government, life on the market, and corruption and political division. And we won't go into depth about it right now because within our quotes, that's when we'll be talking about the main claims.
Yeah. So for the first quote, I really like this one that says, the fact of having different functions and even different institutional cultures doesn't mean that these institutions act in ways that are contradictory one to the other, on page 175. So it would be easy to think that because some institutions don't share the same ideology or culture, they work in a totally different way and govern their own laws. But there is a way regarding a liberal order in the globalist market, which means that at the end, everyone must follow the same order and work together. It's a requirement of these international agencies, so they make sure nobody interferes in personal states' businesses. So I found this example on page 175 that says, so here, if two countries have economies that are equally in crisis and performing equally badly, the IMF may impose strict terms of austerity to the one that is more a threat to the global neoliberal order, and not apply those dictates to the one that is a necessary element in the maintenance of global order. Consequently, the World Bank and the WTO will provide more financial assistance and more commercial advantages for the latter than the former. So they're trying to say that they're not all the same or uniform, but they have to operate within a stable and almost uniform structure in order to agree. For this, there should be a form of self-regulation, right? So in this case, we can find three levels, which are the first one, self-regulation of capitalist interactions. The second one talks about meditations among nation states. And the third one talks about creation of a new global authority. So here, we can take from this that doesn't matter if they're different or not. All of them most aim to maintain stability in market conditions in order to generate contracts between corporation and states, regardless of differences or conflicts. So yeah, that was quote number one.
Okay, so now for key quote number 2, the section that I found was also really important, that just stood out a lot, was big government is back. And just to quickly summarize, it was just like talking about how big government is not really entirely vanished. You know, it actually never really went away because we have evidence in the past with the involvement of big government in the times of crisis. And, you know, the book gives an example of 9/11. So during such crisis, it was a huge reminder that the need of big government was crucial in order to have better security, at least in that time. And of course, it also talks about that big government is a reminder to combat corruption. Once this practice is like accepted and nothing is being done, that's like essentially, of course, a form of corruption. And the book gives the example of the Enron scandal, which was a reminder of that because of such big and corrupted businesses like this were starting to be seen as a common way to do business. And so this is when my key quote comes in, and it talks about the weakening of national legal regulations, the preeminence of unwritten rules over codified norms, and the weak form of governments make it open season for the profit hunters. And this is in page 178. So my question would be, what is a better solution than to have economic regulation during these times? You know, because obviously in such companies, prominent politicians can also be involved in scandals and corruption. So yeah.
Okay, I also got this quote, um, and right now we're gonna start talking about life on the market. So the government's job is to care for the well-being of private property. All forms of property, physical, mobile, land, which is one of the safest form of property, but it's also trained by corruption. So this part talks about how the form of corruption and destructions of property affects economy. So we already know that there are many forms and ways that people can get stolen, and the more material there is, they have more chance of being stolen. So on this quote on page 179 that says, the reproducibility that makes them valuable is exactly what threatens their private character. So as I said, there are like a lot of ways of get stolen, but the more you have, the more chance you have to be to get um, like threatened by this people who's trying to damage or get your property. So, which basically refers to exposing a material so much. That was something that I found really interesting about this quote.
Okay, yeah. Key quote number 4. So it also talks about life on the market. And like Amila said, you know, this actually this section was really interesting and really eye-opening as well, because nature is not being seen as just nature and something that, you know, is essential. And you know, animals and the simple beings of life are being seen as a commodity. And so if these higher ups that can make profit out of what is already brought here to us, you know, nature, the book talks about how we, and by, you know, by we, it means that like the non-scientists need to be the ones that need to be the ones to step up. So become educated enough and become specialists in order to challenge the right of scientists to maintain exclusive control of research. And this is where my quote comes in, but I will also talk about how in this section it talks about a few cases and about the issue that involved in the neem tree in India, and also the case of wound healing with turmeric powder, which was really interesting because that's where traditional and scientific knowledge came into play, and makes you realize, or just makes you question really about how scientific work is only being recognized and only their products can be eligible for property. And also it talks about how creativity protects intangible goods and how privatization hinders it when communication is the basis of production. So coming back to my key quote number 4 is traditional forms of the production of knowledge are not recognized as labor, and thus their products are regarded as the common heritage of humanity. So my question would be, should traditional forms of production of knowledge be recognized as labor? Why or why not, of course. And if yes, what should be done in order to protect these traditional forms of knowledge? So yes.
So we decided to put these questions as discussion question because like through the pages we have been talking about how states they don't want people to get on their businesses, if that makes sense. So according to the opinions and desires and results working through the states has given up to now, do you think that is a better way to work directly with the population and avoid all this plot of states, or do you think the way everything has been working is enough to maintain the stability of the economy?
Yes. So thank you very much, guys. This was our presentation. And yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.